Hi all, this game is Anand versus Grischuk. Anand was playing white. It was played in the World Championship tournament in Mexico City. So e4 from Anand, Grischuk played e5, then Anand played knight f3, and we have some standard moves here leading up to what could have been a martial gambit, but Anand, instead of playing c3 here, played an anti-martial system with a4. Black now replied with b4, and actually this move was chosen in a chessbowl.net rest of the world game against H-Crews recently. We thought b4 was the best move. Actually, it cramps white's situation on the queen side, and also sometimes the b5 square can be used as a pivot square when white plays a5 later. Anand now played d3, which is one of the more solid moves to play here, and d6 was then played. Now knight d2. So Anand's following potentially a classical plan of knight f1 to g3, or knight f1 to e3, eyeing this sensitive f5 square or the d5 square. Black now played knight a5, with the idea of stretching on the queen side, gaining some space now with c5. Now here Anand played a nice plan of just going for the centre actually, not moving this knight, but going for the centre with c3 and then later now d4. Black now took with the e pawn here, and there's a Benoni type pawn structure for black emerging here after cd, knight b4, bishop b1. You'll see here that black's pawns, he's got an isolated pawn here and a potentially weak pawn here. But Anand first he decides he doesn't mind about weakening his king a bit to chase this bishop to g6, and now he plays d5, and we'll see now we've got actually the same strategic plan that white would play against the modern Benoni, in that the c4 square is very useful for eyeing this weakness here. So Anand plays knight c4, and black tries to remove that knight, but Anand just takes and then moves his other knight there to c4. So again, he's eyeing that d6 pawn, and we'll see this becomes a very important strategic theme here. But in this particular position, white has weakened the dark squares a little bit, and he hasn't got the dark square bishop. So white has to try and get rid of that queen now, and he does so by queen d2. So he temporarily gets the knight off c4 to weaken those dark squares, or rather to neutralise the weakness of his dark squares. Then after f6 he returns back to c4, and now we see a very interesting plan here by Anand, just gaining space again, f4. So it's quite dramatic, and you know, for a simplified position it's usually a bit dangerous to gain space because of the vacuum of weaknesses left behind. But he knows what he's doing, and he plays very elegantly now. After bishop f7, Anand plays rook a3. And white perhaps doesn't want to sit and watch maybe a plan of h4 or g5, gaining even more space. Black lashes out now with g5, but it does give an inroad into the black position with the f-file. To do so, Anand ingeniously sacrifices a pawn now with h4. And you'll see that after g takes f4, look at these isolated pawns in black's position. There's loads of them. And Anand will basically, using this pawn sacrifice, he's getting his rook to start pressurising them. So f6 is under fire, and he's regained his pawn. And now this move h5 with the threat of h6 decoying the king away from f6. Anand leaves the a pawn, he doesn't mind about that. So he wins the f6 pawn, and now finally we get that d6 pawn is again under fire. But first he plays g5 to defend this rook. Rook f8, and now he takes that pawn, and now we've got a big d pawn, passed pawn here, which Anand plays to sort of maximise its potential. So knight e5 here, rook f4, now rook f6. The rook can't be taken. King knight d7 check would be a fork. So rook h4. Now we see this big passed pawn being used. d6. Black exchanges bishops, but it doesn't relieve this positional pressure now of the check. Rook e7. White's also got the trump of the rook on the 7th, which is always very dangerous, stopping Black's king from coming out. And potentially this pawn's quite dangerous as well. Rook d8, so Anand simply defends that passed pawn. c4. The passed pawn just continues now with d7, and Black's position is now critical. In fact, it's probably lost now with best play. Rook f1 is played now, after that rook f4. And then simply takes, doesn't mind the simplifications, because he's winning that h7 pawn now, and Black's position is now completely lost. He plays c3, and after knight g6 check, Black resigned. So, in conclusion and summary, let's have a quick look at that. There was an anti-martial played with a4, avoiding the more standard c3, which would allow the martial gambit with d5. So Black plays b4, which is not a bad system, and d3, d6 is also not bad. Now Black gained space on the queen side. White went for the classical pawn centre, which later it now transposes into a Benoni kind of pawn structure, where the d6 pawn is a critical weakness often. So here we see Anand not worrying too much about creating dark square weaknesses here, because he wants to get that bishop to g6 and pursue this d6 attacking plan. So first he takes time to exchange off queens, and now we see this lovely exploitation of the isolated pawns with the rook coming in, and in the final phase we see this d pawn being a menace to Black. So Anand not worrying about simplifying, because this is just crushing in this final position. So another excellent win by Anand in the Mexico tournament. Congratulations to Anand on becoming the new world champion.